Alright everybody, this is Boxing During Dinner live from Rochester, New York. I know that you're wondering where Armando is. He is in sunny South Florida. I'm here in the bitter cold. I'm in a sweatshirt in upstate New York. But I still got my food. If you want to zoom in here, I've got some delicious bran flakes in that bowl filled with goodness. And a jug filled with water from Wegmans Supermarket, which is the supermarket up here. We don't have any Publix. But we're back after a long break of Boxing During Dinner madness. You got the holidays going on, and there's a little bit more going on now. My little sister's behind the camera here. There's no Alex back there, but we got a lot of fun going on. But let's get right down to the fight news, and I'm going to ask Armando what his thoughts are on this in a second. But a lot of stuff coming on, and the biggest story right now is the fact that Floyd Mayweather on January 6th was supposed to report to jail for 90 days, and then all of a sudden he gets approval from a judge to delay his sentence until June 1st. Which of course means that the May 5th date that he had set aside to be his next date at the MGM Grand for his boxing match against an unnamed opponent is now available. Of course, the talk has been that Mayweather wants to fight Pacquiao, and the drama, of course, is that Bob Arum has come out and said Pacquiao's 4 opponents are going to either be Miguel Cotto, Juan Manuel Marquez for a third or a fourth fight this time, Timothy Bradley or Lamont Peterson. And so finally there's this belief that the only person holding this fight up is Bob Arum for the first time. Now, Mayweather apparently is going to be either fighting Canelo Alvarez or Robert Guerrero apparently, or somebody from the School of the Blind or some retard. But in reality, the fight that everybody wants to see is not going to happen again. And the MGM Grand is locked for May 5th, and that's what we have right now. So Armando, my question is, what are you having for dinner tonight?
Well, David, you know what? I was eating the sandwich with some fries, but your damn rant took so freaking long that I had to eat it because I was so hungry. But you know what? I do miss you, bro. I even wore like a pink shirt in your honor. It's a boxing shirt, but it's a David pink shirt. It's not a V-neck, and it's not extremely tight up to here like yours, but you know what? It is a pink shirt, so that's for you. And look, I saved your space. But you know what? Screw this, man. I got the table all to myself. What the hell am I doing, dude? Seriously. But David, this is Boxing During Dinner, so we got to talk a little boxing. You were talking about the whole Mayweather situation, and I'm not trying to put, you know, words in people's mouths, and I'm not trying to come up with conspiracy theories, but don't you think this judge got paid money under the table? Who the hell says that for the better of the Las Vegas community and to honor a contract, she's going to wait till June to send you to jail? If I beat up my wife, I will go to jail tomorrow. I can't say, hey, look, I'm working on a Super Bowl special. I can't go. It's gonna cost me money. No, I'm going to jail tomorrow. But Floyd Mayweather obviously is not, you know, a normal person like we are. What I do wonder, David, is will Floyd Mayweather show the troops in Afghanistan his cell and say, hey man, look, this is my bathroom. This is my. No, I doubt he'll do that. I think he'll wait till I guess he gets out in September. But as far as who he's gonna fight, we know he's not gonna fight Pacquiao, especially not in May. There's a whole back and forth between De La Hoya and Bob Arum as to whose fault it is. You know what? It's everybody's fault. Kevin Iole from the Las Vegas paper and the Yahoo Sports boxing, he said it's everybody's fault, and I agree. It's not just one person's fault. They're all being childish about this. It's time for the fighters to come out and say, you know what? Screw it. We want to fight each other. And let's make it happen. It's $50 million per fighter. It's the biggest fight in boxing. Nobody wants to see Mayweather against anybody else. Sure, a Canelo fight will be lucrative because it's a Mexican against Floyd Mayweather. It's during Cinco de Mayo weekend. It'll be packed. But you know what? Even then, Canelo didn't even fill out that La Plaza de Toros in Mexico, and that's his hometown. And plus, he's a young guy. I'm still not a huge believer of Canelo. I think Mayweather will pick him apart. And as much as I like Robert Guerrero personally, because there's not too many people I would cheer for against Floyd Mayweather, I mean, to the death, and Robert Guerrero is one of them because he's a good guy. He's been through a lot in his career, coming back from injury. And again, like I said, excellent guy, but I don't think he's in the league of a Floyd Mayweather, and I don't know why this whole PR effort into making that fight happen, because to me, as much as I like Robert Guerrero, it doesn't make any sense to me as a big fight. I think Canelo might give him a tougher time just because he's bigger. Mayweather still wins. So David, you know, I agree with you. Nobody wants to see these other fights. Everybody wants to see Mayweather Pacquiao. They just got to make this fight.
So if I had to put my money on it, Armando, that's a really good point. I would say Mayweather-Alvarez, May 5th. Mark your calendars. That's going to be the fight. Now, of course, the other side of this thing that we're talking about is Manny Pacquiao. Who's he going to fight? It looks like in order to fight Marquez a fourth time, he wants a guarantee, at least what I'm reading, of $28 million. The only other person on that four-man list that he would get in the ring to even make that kind of money is Miguel Cotto. The only reason that is, I'm going to say that's the next best option for him from a financial standpoint. Probably the number one option from a financial standpoint. But among those four guys, the real story is that no one wants to see him fight any of those guys. The same way no one wants to see Mayweather fight Canelo or Robert Guerrero or anyone else. But that's what we have to deal with, unfortunately. Now, moving on to some fights that are actually going to happen. In February, we've got Victor Ortiz versus Andre Berto in a rematch. Not Madison Square Garden, because that would be awesome. I'd go there. But it's going to be in Las Vegas and at the MGM Grand also. But coming before that, a doubleheader that was picked up by HBO, which is Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. versus Marco Antonio Rubio. And on the undercard, you've got Nonito Donaire versus Wilfredo Vasquez Jr., which has an awesome fight written all over it. I think the undercard has the potential to be the better fight. Donaire is moving up in weight again to fight Vasquez, who's trying to regain the championship belt that he lost against Jorge Arce. And then in the main event, you've got arguably Chavez's stiffest opponent to date against Marco Antonio Rubio, who's best known for losing all of his biggest fights. But then this past year, he comes out and knocks out David Lemieux, who's this Canadian prospect with like 26 wins, 24 knockouts. And all of a sudden, you've got the makings of what might be a really good fight. And Armando, what are your thoughts on these two fights? What do you think is going to come out of these two? Because I've got my money on Donaire and Chavez, only because as much as I hate to say I'm a believer, he's actually coming along well. What do you think?
David, as good as Marco Antonio Rubio is, I don't think he'll beat Chavez. Chavez is a big kid. He's gonna come in that day at like around 170, 175 at light heavyweight. Marco Antonio Rubio, I remember when he fought at 147, 154, got knocked out by Kofi Jantois. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna throw out names out there like Max Kellerman, you know, Harry Greb and Joe Gans and Mantequilla Napoles, Luis Manuel Rodriguez. I'm just gonna blab on names. It's like Dave Wanstead mixed with Max Kellerman. But yeah, Marco Antonio Rubio lost to Kofi Jantois a long time ago. He did beat David Lemieux last year. Looked good in doing so. And you know, he's worked with some fighters as a sparring partner, most recently Miguel Cotto. And Rubio's a good fighter, not up to the caliber of Julio Cesar Chavez. Like I've been saying, David, Julio Cesar Chavez is not as bad as people think. He's a good fighter. I think he beats Canelo. I think he gives a lot of people trouble. He doesn't beat Sergio Martinez, don't get me wrong, and we'll get to that in a little bit, David. You're going to talk a little bit about that Sergio Martinez WBC controversy. So I think Chavez wins that fight. On the other hand, Wilfredo Vasquez Jr. If there's one fighter that I have authority to talk about with complete confidence is Wilfredo Vasquez Jr. I've seen this kid since his first fight. Every single fight. I've called one of his fights against Ivan Hernandez. The kid's a really good guy. I love the guy. I've been to his house in Puerto Rico, you know, hung out with the family. Against Nonito Donaire, he might be biting off more than he could chew. Nonito Donaire's a killer boxer, one of the top 5 pound-for-pound fighters. If Vasquez loses to him, it's not a big deal because he's still young. He could still recover and win other titles. I think in a rematch, he would destroy Jorge Arce. In the first fight, it was just a little inexperience. Against Nonito Donaire, if he boxes, because he does have a really good jab, very underrated jab, he will give him a tough time. But Wilfredo Vasquez is a slow starter. The first 2-3 rounds, he just starts off really slow. And he has against everybody he's fought. Even Hernandez, even Sonsona, who he took out in the 5th round, I believe, he started off a little slow. So against Nonito Donaire, he has to pick up the pace. Donaire hasn't really been tested, especially at this weight division, now that he's climbing up. Wilfredo Vasquez does have a very good right hand. He'll test him a little bit, but he has to box. Do not engage with Nonito Donaire because he's going to end up being knocked out against Donaire. All he has to do is box him, try to make it a difficult fight. Watch Narvaez, what he did against him, except fight a little more because Narvaez really didn't do anything, David. But as far as Chavez, you're going to talk a little bit about this WBC thing with Chavez and Martinez, and we'll get back to Miami in a second.
Armando, one of the other interesting things about this whole situation with Chavez is that the WBC convention that was just a few weeks ago, at that convention it was said that Chavez would be stripped of his belt unless he fought Sergio Martinez in his next fight. Well, come to find out, Chavez takes this fight with Rubio. Sergio Martinez, in the meantime, decides that he's going to vacate his diamond belt. So now you have no fight between Chavez and Martinez, but then Chavez is possibly going to be stripped of his title as well for not fighting Martinez. So the two guys who were the champions of this stupid WBC middle belt, whatever you want to call it, neither of them might be champions in just a few short weeks, which means that Marco Antonio Rubio still might not win his title even if he were to somehow win this fight. Armando, what do you make of this mess that is the WBC? Especially with all the stuff that they're talking about, how Mayweather, his crime and what he's going to jail for. Jose Sulaiman, the president, says that beating women is no big moral sin. What is this guy on? What kind of drugs is he taking?
David, the only thing that you were a little off on in stating that is that Chavez right now does become the full-fledged WBC champion. He will not be stripped because Martinez gave up the WBC belt. He wants nothing to do with the WBC right now. And he even wants to switch from HBO to Showtime because he says HBO is allowing this Chavez fight against Rubio to go ahead. They could have stopped it. They could have said, you know what, Sulaiman, he needs to fight Martinez, and that's the fight we're going to go for. But he's going to fight Marco Antonio Rubio on HBO on Super Bowl weekend. And Sergio Martinez, you know, I guess he has to look at other options. But as far as Martinez, I feel bad for him because I was in Vegas when Sulaiman told us to our face that Martinez and Chavez had to fight. If not, Chavez will be stripped. Fast forward a month later, you know, he goes back on his word. Rubio against Chavez. Martinez is pissed off, and rightly so. I mean, he gave Chavez the opportunity to become champ. I mean, it's not a secret that Sulaiman and Chavez are like this. I mean, he's the guy's godfather, for God's sakes. He was a big part of his dad's career. You know, he helped out his dad a lot. The second Frankie Randall fight, which I still think is bullshit. Flip Hamansky tells Chavez he can continue. Chavez, for some reason, says he can't anymore and wins a technical decision. But let's not go back to that. Let's talk about Chavez Jr. at this point. The fight needs to happen, David. The fight needs to happen for if Chavez Jr. wants to say he's the best middleweight in the world. Looks like it's not going to happen. He'll remain champ. Sergio Martinez maybe moves up to super middleweight, maybe explores other options at middleweight. But he comes out being the loser in this, David, because it's a big payday that he's missing out on. And to me, Sergio Martinez is probably one of the top 3 or 4 best fighters in the world and a big talent and one of my favorite fighters, one of the best guys in boxing. And this situation just plain sucks.
But next week, we're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about these fights that are coming up with Chavez and Rubio, like we said, Donaire and Vasquez. And then there's a lot of fights on deck in February. Hopefully, the next time we come around also, we'll have an answer on who Floyd Mayweather's fighting, as well as Manny Pacquiao. And this first half of 2012 will be starting to take a little bit of shape because once those two big guys define who their opponents are, everything else starts to fall in line. The Boxing During Dinner is back in 2012. A lot of changes, as you can see, but I mean, the food's not going to be as good because I've got an empty bowl of cereal, and that's probably what I'll be making for myself. But the same episodes are going to be coming to you with a lot of good information. Be sure to check us out, boxingduringdinner.com, at BoxDuringDinner on Twitter, Facebook.com/BoxingDuringDinner, and email us at BoxingDuringDinner@gmail.com. And continue to send hate mail towards Armando because he's married and he's boring, and I'm upstate New York freezing, and I'm also boring.
So, David, yeah, I hope you're enjoying Rochester. As you can see, I'm wearing a t-shirt. You're wearing a sweater. You're eating, what was that, brand cereal, Alex? Was that what he was eating? And, you know, I'm eating good sandwiches. I made this myself, actually, and these fries, and Alex got to eat because obviously you're over there, but we miss you over here. It'll just take a few more weeks before you realize you belong back in Miami. You know, you can't wear those t-shirts that you always wear in Rochester. It's not happening, and I'm sure you'll miss the quality of women too. Sorry to the women in Rochester. Kisses to you, but have you seen these Miami chicks? I mean, seriously, can't really compare. But Boxing During Dinner will have a huge 2012. We'll have guests as usual. We'll have girls. We'll have your comments, and we love you, the fans. And for those asking for t-shirts, we'll find a way to tell you guys how you can get some later on. But from Rochester and from Miami, this is Boxing During Dinner. See you next week.